Wow, guys, Byron Donalds just destroyed Dana Bash when you try to make Obama look like a good guy. You got to check this out.
Byron Donalds, a supporter of Donald Trump. We have a lot to get to. I want to start with your state of Florida. Hurricane Milton devastated the state generally and parts of your district as well. President Biden is in Florida today. How is your community doing?
We're recovering. We need power to be restored. I know work crews, I know different power companies are working round the clock to do that. There are people in my district, but I know throughout Florida who took on flooding in their homes. So they're in the process now of having to, get the muck out of their houses and try to rebuild. For some of my residents, they just finished rebuilding from Hurricane Ian 2 years ago, and now they have to restart that process. So that's very devastating.
Guys, I don't want this to be one of those videos where I pause it a lot, but what I noticed on CNN and these other horrible outlets, news outlets, that he could say firsthand that he knows people there that are experiencing bad stuff there with the hurricane. And then with the cats and dogs situation, JD Vance, he's been to Ohio plenty of times. He knows people there that may have got their cats and dogs eaten, but they don't respect that when it's coming from a Republican. That's what I noticed. Let's keep going, guys.
For those families, and we're going to be with them every step of the way. In terms of just restoration for Southwest Florida in particular, once we get power back on throughout the entire county, we'll finish the rebuilding process once again.
Well, Congressman, as you were just talking about the devastation there from a natural disaster last night, the former president threatened to withhold wildfire aid from California over the state's water and environmental rules. Listen to what he said.
We're going to take care of our farmers. We're going to take care of your water situation. And we'll force it down his throat. And we'll say, Gavin, if you don't do it, we're not giving you any of that fire money that we send you all the time for all the forest fires that you have.
Are you comfortable with that, particularly given how you are seeing firsthand how important it is for federal help in a time of natural disaster?
Well, actually, Dana, this is a great question. I think when you look at Florida versus California, taking in hurricane force winds and massive flooding is one thing. There's not much the state of Florida can do to prevent that. You compare that with California's environmental policy. A lot of their forest fires are mostly caused because the state of California blocks the management of their lands. They don't clear the underbrush. We do that here in Florida, which is why you don't have the major issues of massive forest fires raging through our state. But California doesn't do the simple work of clearing underbrush. So who that really puts at risk are the citizens of California. And this is, in my view, radical environmental policy, decades long in that state. And so what ends up happening is that taxpayers have to foot the bill for this every single year.
Well, the
I think
topography
what Donald
of
Trump is really
California and
getting
Florida,
at
as you
is
know,
that
is very
California should actually take care of this problem as well.
as you know,
It is very
Did you guys notice she tried to talk over him immediately once he starts stating facts, right? He didn't let that happen. That's what I respect a lot about Byron Donalds, guys. Him and JD Vance are kind of the same when it comes to angry reporters like this that think they're doing their job when in reality they're just following a script. Let's keep going, guys.
very
different, but if
different.
you leave fuel on the ground in terms of branches and underbrush, it does contribute to larger forest fires. It simply does.
So are you saying that you're comfortable with President Trump saying that if he is elected again, he will withhold federal aid for fires in California?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not comfortable with that, and I think Congress is going to weigh in on this heavily. And of course, we're going to do what needs to be done. But
So
California does have to look at their land management issues in the future. They have to look at that, Dana, and we have to be responsible with the dollars that the federal government is going to be spending. We're always going to be there for the American people. Make no mistake about that. But California does need to have a responsibility to clean up their lands.
Let me turn to the topic of what Kamala Harris is doing this coming week, particularly Monday and Tuesday. She's got several events courting black voters. I know that you are talking about the black vote coming out, particularly black men, for Donald Trump. You're trying to help him along with that. To that point, can you talk specifically about what Donald Trump would do policy-wise in a second term to help black Americans?
Sure, and thank you for that question.
And I, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but everyone's saying help, help, help. How can you help black people? I think you need to help the world. I need you to help the world be a better place because if you just focus on one race, you're gonna miss out on the other people that also need help. We're not the only people that need help. I'm sorry to say, but we're not the only people that need help in this world. You know what I mean? And making it so easy for one race kind of hinders them. That's my honest take on it. Let's keep going, guys.
What Donald Trump is going to do is going to be actually quite similar to what he did in his first term. When you lower tax rates, when you cut these reckless and crazy policies that are now in the Kamala Harris administration, and you cut those regulations down, what it does is it frees up the ability for businesses to thrive, for people to be able to earn more money, for them to be able to keep more money in their pockets. All of his economic policies actually have a stabilizing effect on prices, and they grow our economy. You couple that with his energy policies. He calls it drill, baby, drill. But what it is being energy dominant in the United States of America. That also allows for us to put a cap on these massive price increases under the Kamala Harris administration. What that means in particular for black families is that you have an ability to earn more money, keep more money, wages actually growing, when you adjust them for inflation. And then the big stat, and this happened during the first Trump administration, nobody likes to talk about it. I heard Senator Warnock mention it. Wages adjusted for inflation were massively up under Donald Trump for black men, for black families, but for all Americans. The wage gap that Democrats love to lecture about, the wage gap in 2019 was actually shrinking under Donald Trump's administration, his economic policies, his energy policies, and his regulatory
Can I just
policies.
go back to the tax?
So that's the agenda that black men are looking at.
Okay, thank you for that. The tax cut question.
Again, go ahead.
I would imagine that Kamala Harris would say or would ask the question about how tax cuts for wealthy Americans will help the black community. What's the answer to that?
Well, Kamala Harris would say something like that. But we know that she's wrong because economically she's been wrong for the last 1,400 days. If you look at Tax Cut and Jobs Act, it cut tax rates across the board, mostly for middle class families. So this is why wages adjusted for inflation for black families was higher under Donald Trump than any other administration in the history of our country. That is a record of economic success.
Let me just quickly play for you what former President Obama said exactly on this question of the economy a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it was pretty good because it was my economy. It wasn't something he did. I had spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me the last time. He didn't do nothing except those big tax cuts.
How do you respond to that?
I tell you what, the Democrats are running out of tricks. I think take this, look at this like it's a hat, right? I have my tea. They're pulling out Obama. You know, that's their last little trick. They're pulling out Obama to try to win over these votes. I'm here. I'm not leaving here. I'm here. That they're doing every trick to have rappers, all types of stuff. That you're not gonna you're done confusing me. You're not gonna keep confusing me with these rappers, all this stuff that you care about me. I know you don't. I'm sorry. I know you don't care about me. So I'm not gonna go out and vote for you. So you can have Obama crawl back to wherever cave he came out of. Cause that guy was horrible. Let's keep going, guys.
Very easily. I was working in finance during Barack Obama's administration. Let me tell you, the economy under his especially the last 5 years, was growing at about 1 to 1.5% per year. I think at the time, President Obama was saying that, this era of large economic growth is something of the past. We're going to have a more consistent economy. Well, in his words, a consistent economy meant one that barely grew. So when Donald Trump came in, he brought his tax cut policy in, which cut taxes across the board for everybody in our country. Couple the fact that he did cut massive regulations from the Obama administration. And what did we see? Economic growth in the United States went from 1.5% under Barack Obama to 3.5% under Donald Trump. Wages adjusted for inflation, like I said, because it's the truth, increased for every subgroup of Americans in our country. The wealth gap was closing. We were actually booming economically far more than we did under Barack Obama. So that's a cool statement he made on the stump, but it's not true.
Congressman, before I let you go, I do want to ask about a law that Congress passed, a new version of the Electoral Count Act. They passed it 2 years ago, and it makes it harder to object to certifying election results on January 6, 2025 and beyond. Some Trump allies have argued that's unconstitutional. The House Speaker hasn't taken a clear position. Should Congress follow that law in certifying the 2024 presidential election?
Look, I think when you're talking about the election this November, the thing that people want is that local jurisdictions follow the law passed by the states. As long as everybody does that, there's not going to be any problem certifying this election this November. But what really matters about this election are the issues facing the American people, not the Electoral College Count Act. Because what we need is a president who's going to secure our border, actually make our foreign policy be strong again and make sense again. That's what matters.
Are you going to follow the new law about certifying?
And I've been very clear, Dana, as long as states and jurisdictions follow election procedures in their states, there will be no problem for me or anybody on Capitol Hill.
All right. Well, that's a giant loophole that you're leaving there, which there's no evidence that has not happened. It didn't happen in 2020.
That's not a loophole. That's actually not a loophole, Dana.
It is.
And if you look at what happened in Pennsylvania, Arizona, and other jurisdictions in 2020, they did not follow election procedures passed by the state legislature. That's an empirical fact.
Evidence of widespread fraud that went through, 60 court cases and even
Dana, I did not say fraud. You said fraud. What I'm talking about, and if you want to talk about it, let's be clear. You had the state of Pennsylvania where the state Supreme Court said they would count ballots 3 days after the polls closed in Pennsylvania in 2020. That's a violation of state law passed by the legislature, signed by the governor. But that's what happened in the state of Pennsylvania. That's one example.
Okay. Well, Congressman, this has been litigated, and I'm assuming that a lot more of it will be litigated. Let's just hope that everybody watches the votes counted and takes a breath and lets them be counted, particularly in Pennsylvania, which doesn't start to count by law until Election Day. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
So, guys, they have until Election Day to count the votes from Pennsylvania. What do you think they're going to do with them? What do you honestly think they're going to do with those votes? I pray to God that's not what happens, but what do you think they might do? I think it's a possibility, but I know a lot of these people are starting to wake up to the truth. And a lot of you guys that are subscribed to me are woke up to the truth way before me. I want to thank you guys for coming here today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're new, and be sure to let me know what to react to. We're out.